What's a toxic relationship?
Why are we continuously looking at it that way?
Don't go and do that, okay? Because it's a very bad thing. How's it going, guys? It's XR Vision Media Podcast, and today we're discussing another topic for you guys to use an expert's POV for your reference. We're going to dive into the topic today, and today's topic is toxic behavior. So, with that being said, let me ask Mark a question. What's a toxic relationship?
Well, I think a toxic relationship is one that is possibly one-sided. It's supposed to be a relationship, so it should be two sides. I think the one partner is dominant than the other. And then again, that's back to being a one-way street situation scenario we've just discussed before. But I think also it is one that you're not comfortable with. And I think if you're in the relationship just to be in a relationship and things are happening that should not be happening, and if it's something that you're uncomfortable with, then I think to some degree that's, toxic.
So what's the recent toxic relationship that you've been in? It doesn't have to be with, any gender. It could be just whatever circumstance.
I've been in a few one-sided, so if you want to consider that to be toxic, ultimately it could lead to toxicity. Your definition of toxic is different than the next person's.
Yeah.
So I think what people need to really pay attention to is being comfortable in who you are and the things that don't give you a positive energy, then you need to move forward. Mm-hmm. I think because we get so caught up in being comfortable in being in negative vibrations where it's considered, that's just how it is, or, because you've been around toxicity in your whole life. And so you've been brought up, the family's in that same kind of situation where it's sort of saying that, let's say, I have to be very careful because, the women are watching and I say something and I don't want to offend any woman by any means, but it tends to be that way where women take the brunt of the negativity and accept it for whatever reason. I don't have a reason because I can't say I speak from experience, but what I've seen, it's something that they're comfortable with because that's just how it happens. And it's not necessarily the positiveness of it being the way life should be. But I think that at this point, the fact that we're having this conversation is actually bringing up things that we need to have discussion about. I've said it on both episodes before in regards to we're having conversations. And the problem is we need to have the conversation. It may be uncomfortable, it may be out of place to some people, but the fact that the conversation is being initiated or having in motion is on the road to recovery, to say something less than. But I think, we cannot discount anyone's version of toxicity. So I think in the conversations you have with whomever you're having a difficulty with or whatever, it's just like, look, this is how I feel. Mm-hmm. Whether you want to take it to heart or whatever, I'm not saying it for you, I'm saying it for me. And I think, closed mouths don't get fed. So how many more times have people been quiet when they should have said something? Mm-hmm. And then 10 years down the road, well, you were always, whoa. This is the first time I heard it in 10 years. Yeah. So obviously it hasn't,
been communicated, yeah.
So, and that's, you said a key word about communication before in the other podcast as well, is we need to have dialogue. And the problem is the key word in that is dialogue, which means it's two-way. Yeah. It's not a monologue. It's not like you're sitting you're in class and the teacher's just telling you something. You have to have response because we need to be comfortable in who we are in stating that I don't agree with how you're saying it. Yeah. And then let you hear my part of it to what you said. So now we can get some common ground. And if you don't know what I'm feeling because you've never said it, then you can't hold me responsible for not knowing how you felt. But because you never said it, now you're blaming me. And then that becomes a whole nother dart in the conversation, and then it makes it even a more interesting place to have conversation, because now that's, you're pulling stuff out of the woodworks, and it's like, well, I felt it. Well, okay, well, how long have you been feeling that? But because we don't communicate correctly, then those things didn't happen. And then it's a defense mechanism versus actually trying to get to the bottom of whatever problem you have.
Having a dialogue is a very important part of growth. And I say this with other people, to my woman, to everybody, but agreeing to disagree is a beautiful part. The disagreement is a beautiful part because you actually accomplish something. And in the negative, we don't see the light, but it, true to be honest, is beautiful because you guys are actually accomplished something, right? But we don't want that negative tendency to, even like come into a circumstance that we are remotely even close to. That's why we tend to shy away from that, but it's actually not negative. So have that dialogue.
Your story, how important your story is. Everybody has a story. Everybody's story is important. But the thing about it is, if you look at you're a cinematographer. So when you see movies, right, what is the one thing that every movie has to grab your attention? Conflict. There's always a conflict. It could be, a physical conflict. It could be a mental conflict. It could be a psychological conflict. But without the conflict,
it doesn't stand.
There's no story.
Yeah.
And so understanding that, in life there is conflict, back to my EKG thing, is that's the conflict. That's the ebb and flow of how life works, and the fact that if you're flatline, you're dead. So, but even with that in your own story, and because that's where it really starts. I think if we really want to look at how to be better, is to understand that you need to be better. Michael Jackson wrote a song about it, said, starts with the man in the mirror. The problem is everybody wants to look at the reflections that are around them in the mirror as is the problem. And not realizing that no matter where you go, no matter what situation you're in it, which means you're the lowest common denominator. You're the one that needs to be adjusted, not the environment. And it's easier said than done, because you can blame it on somebody else and not really, well, it's not my fault, it's their fault. Because you keep pushing it off on them and not realizing you're the one that's in every situation. Why do I get the same kind of guy, or why I get the same kind of girl, or whatever those issues are? And it's because of you. It has nothing to do with nobody else. Why do the people at work don't like me? Well, because you're the one that they don't like. And so what is the problem? Why are we not having that conversation? No one's quick to say, my bad. Because when you say you're bad, then you have I won't say it's a failure. It is a moment in time for the lesson for you to learn, as we view it as failure, and it has nothing to do with being a failure. It's just a lesson you need to learn, take the best, leave the rest, and move on. And the problem is we're not willing to do that.
See, here's the beautiful thing. This is the third time people are seeing what we're doing in a long form content, right? Because they see a lot of short feed.
Right.
But this is the third episode that we're talking about this, and we're solidifying what we're standing on. Our foundations are being shown. Back to the EKG and the conflict. Without that, there's nothing. Like the movie actually needs conflict. Like it needs negative.
Right.
And it's so funny.
So the hero can shine.
That's very true. That's very beautiful. When there's wind and we think, oh, it's windy, it's not actually wind. There's a negative pressure that's sucking air. That's why the wind occurs wherever you are, in between where the air was at and then where the negative pressure occurred. That's what becomes wind, right? And then it just goes over there. That's why you feel like it's wind. It's air moving. But without that negative, nothing will sprout. The word negative really just shows something. It's not really about any negativity, but we tend to hitch that with any type of negativity that we know in life and conclude it as negative. So my thing is, I try not to do that with my life.
Well, it's funny you said this. Are we giving the word negative a negative connotation on purpose? Or is it just how we in society see it, as there has to be a negative or an opposite of whatever. So it's like, cops and robbers or cowboys and Indians, and it's always a negative connotation after and. Cops and robbers, cowboys and Indians. So what you're telling me is what's on the other side of and is negative. Why is that? Positive and negative. Is it the reason? Is it subconsciously? Is it, psychologically implanted? I mean, it's a question I'm asking. If you have an answer, please, comment, because these are the conversations we need to have. And, it's not just us two here having this conversation on this couch. We're having a conversation with you. I just can't hear you. So, comment, please. And gladly warranted, your responses. But back to the point is, why are we continuously looking at it that way? Is it because of how we've been taught that it always is that way? I mean, you never get the negative first. Robbers and cops, it doesn't flow right because it sounds different because we've been told it's a certain way. So even in relationships, and realizing the older I get, the more I understand being in a relationship. As long as I've been in a relationship, I've been married longer than half of my life.
Oh, wow.
Which is an interesting concept to think about. But I think, unfortunately, because here's another one, men and women. Is women negative? Because it comes after and? But I'm just saying, I'm just throwing it out there. Comment if I'm trying to bait you. Bring it in. Those kind of things. But as far as the relationship, considering and understanding that it is a ebb and flow, and then based back to your comment on what's toxic in relationship is based on what we've been told over and over and over that have passed on from generation to generation. Not saying that long relationships don't exist in our communities, because they do. We see them every now and then on Good Morning America. Oh, this couple's been married 65 years. They've been married 70 years, 80 years. So they do exist. But then when you have a conversation and they ask him what made it last this long, and there's always conflict is in there. Is how do you resolve conflict? Because we're not always chummy, and and based on, I know with my wife and I mean, we've been, like I said, we're coming up on 30 in August, which is not far at all. But thank you. But I think what it is that there are times that you don't like the person. I know there are times she does not like me. I know it. She doesn't have to say it. I can see it.
My woman says it. You don't like me. And now here's the thing. I never had a moment where I didn't like her. I didn't like the way she was acting.
It's the action. And I think that's the part we don't separate. Even when it's something that when you say you don't like a person, it's not so much that you don't like the person, you just don't like the way they act.
I never look at it as I don't like the way, I don't like this. I don't try to put that in the equation. What I do is I don't agree with the way that you're doing X, Y, and Z. I don't agree with the way that you're conducting yourself. I don't agree with what you're saying. It's got nothing to do with me liking you or not. I like you. I love you. I want to be with you. But I just don't agree with what you're doing right now. So I know how to distance myself from, that person close to arm's length enough. So I try to, really not put the like or dislike, because I'm very black and white in my mind.
Okay.
Which, if it goes that route, everything's going to become hectic. So for me to keep balance and peace, I commit to you. I just don't agree with what you're doing. And that gives me a lot of peace. That's one thing that I could share, because, like I said, as a lifelong student that has a lot of good mentors, I can use that in my advantage so that I don't have to, go through the rough seas in a relationship, because every relationship has rough moments,
Once again, there's conflict.
And the conflict is where the beauty lies, right? But we tend to kind of shy away from that. And then the other thing is because nowadays with social media and everything becoming more, shorter, faster, it's a dopamine rush. It's crazy because one of the girls that I know, I was asking them because they're one of the boyfriends like a super like bad boy, like not actually doing anything good. And I asked her, I knew the answer, but I asked her. I wanted to know where she was in her head. I said, okay, what's so good about this? Like what's good about this? And she was like, I it's just a rush. It's exciting and whatever. You associate the rush with being positive, which is a dopamine rush. And somebody that doesn't give you the dopamine rush as a negative because it's boring. Well, now your positive and the negative is skewed and it's totally the opposite, which is not letting you conduct yourself in a positive way. It's not that the boring person has nothing to offer. You never looked at him because there's no dopamine rush in the relationship, but the dopamine rush oftentimes in a relationship comes from the negative space. So what we call negative is very important. We have to identify that too, but also we have to identify that if there is a negative and it is an imminent negative and that's what you're getting a kick out of, you might be looking at life in the wrong way. You have to change your paradigm.
Well, not only that, but I mean, if you are turned on, lack of a better word, excuse me if I offended anybody, do you understand that your life is moving in that direction?
Yeah.
So even if you were a good person, had morals or whatever, but if that's the only thing that attracts you, just like any drug, you're trying to chase that same high, looking for that first hit every single time, which means you're getting deeper, deeper, deeper into an area that by the time you figure it out, it's too late. Well, it's not too late. It's just now you're in a situation you can't get out of quickly.
Yeah.
It could be, being arrested or your house being raided or, I mean, the list goes on. But now it's like, you're like, how did I get here? Yeah. And because you don't have healthy relationships, unhealthy dopamine rush to put you in a space that you're comfortable, that you're in. Why are we chasing such negativity? And so you said, for her, she said it's this dopamine, but it's like, okay, so what is it that side, is it something that you think you're missing and that, you like the way it felt and so now you're chasing it instead of going, okay, there are other things that give me the same result that are not necessarily detrimental to my life?
Back in the day, I used to be a bad boy, and then I used to do bad stuff. I had a tendency of trying to figure out going into stores and knowing purposefully where the surveillance cameras were. And I used to shoplift just for the rush.
Okay.
Never been caught. Never been caught. I'm not saying that that's a good thing.
I'm glad you finished that. I was like,
if you're watching this, okay, don't go and do that, okay, because it's a very bad thing. But after I started learning that negative and that rush that I was feeling was putting me and taking me into a zone where it was not really conductive for my life, right? So I began to hate it. Part of the reason why I liked the rush was because of how I was raised, I guess. But when I was a child, I learned that rush and that excitement and adrenaline pump oftentimes ended up with that being a negative outcome. So I started hating rushes. As a child, I disassociated myself with the rush. So now it works in my life because whenever there is a moment where I feel that negative adrenaline pump, I know that it is not a right environment for me to be in. I wanted to say now I actually get a kick of conducting myself and getting successful results in whatever I care for or my business ventures with the people that I love. And I think we succeeded in that part from using that negative into changing it into the positive. So if you guys are watching and you get a kick out of this, make sure you utilize that for your life too, because it works. The other day, I actually saw a subscriber. He came up to me and said that he was listening to the channel, and he said he was thankful that we are shining a light on topics like toxic masculinity and what is even the issue with modern day communication and everything. So I just wanted to, dive into a little bit more of it. Since in the beginning half, we dove into what is toxic behavior in a relationship. So I want to now switch that into what is toxic relationships in a work environment. One recent
Interaction.
interaction that I am going through right now is that so I work with this team, a creative team. I work with several, so it's not just one. But this team was put together in a very unique way. Whoops. How's it going, team? It's Tomas from the XRVMG podcast. The reason why you're seeing me right now is because the other half of the podcast is the exclusive part. And we're talking about very controversial issues and touchy subjects about these known people. I don't mention their name, but it is exclusive content. And the only way you can watch it is to go on our Patreon and subscribe. There, you can watch the full extended version of the podcast, which is exclusive. So make sure you guys check out the link and subscribe if you like. Okay, guys, I'll see you later. With that being said, make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe. You can find us on XRVMG on Instagram as well, so that you could stay connected and send us DMs or your thoughts on all of these short clips. We also made a Patreon. This name is the same, XR Vision Media. And you can watch all of our exclusive content that you can't see on YouTube, behind the scenes to educational content that we won't put on YouTube. So make sure you guys check us out. And for today, that was it. Thank you for joining us. This was Tomas.
I'm Mark, and once again, what Tomas says, echoing what he said in regards to like, subscribe, and share, but also please comment. And, we hope that we're scratching scars that have been, put upon you at some time in your life, and we just want to help you heal them. So like I said, once again, thank you for watching. We truly appreciate you, and y'all have a blessed day. Peace.